It's been in the incubator a whole week and a half now. And in that heat, if it doesn't have a little embryo in it, it's all rotten inside. And when you have rotten eggs, if you have too many of them in your incubator, they give off a really bad poisonous gas that doesn't hurt us, but it would hurt the other little embryos, and it could even kill the other little embryos. So we have to get those bad eggs out of your incubator. Those ones that are kind of like the grocery store egg that we talked about, they don't have little embryos in them, they're not fertilized. Okay, so we're going to get those out of there. The second reason is that I want you guys to see how little that is, all right? And that it doesn't look anything like a chicken. All right, now, the things you're going to see. Now, listen closely, because I'm going to see if you can remember some of these things. A lot of times, kindergartners aren't listening and they don't know what they're looking for. And I bet that you are going to be an exception. You are going to, I know all the things you guys have been learning, and I think you're going to listen and know what to look for. First thing that you're going to look for, in the big end of the egg, there's going to be like a circle. And when I put it on the light, you'll be able to see inside, and you'll see kind of a circle at the end of the egg. And that is a little pocket of air. We call it the air cell. And it's a little pocket of air that's in every single egg, even the ones from the grocery store. But in the ones that have little embryos in them, what happens is when that little embryo becomes a chick, when it has developed all of its parts, its wings and its legs and its lungs and all of those kinds of things that it needs to live outside of the egg, it's going to poke its head up into that little pocket of air. It's going to be all cuddled up in there, and it can't grow anymore, so it raises its head up, and it pokes up into that pocket of air, called an air cell, and it gets its first breath of air. It starts to breathe like we do. It's going, and it gets some air, and then it starts to poke out of the shell. And when it's got a little hole to the outside, then it's getting more air from the outside. And it can breathe air, just the same air that you're breathing. All right? So that's the first thing we're going to look for. Remember, it's called an air cell. Or a pocket of air is okay too. All right, the second thing you're going to look for is when it gets on top of that light, it's going to have some streaks in it. It'll look almost like cracks. But they're not cracks. If you look real close, they're kind of reddish color. And those are like the veins that feed the little embryo so that it can grow. It's feeding it from the egg yolk. One end of that red vessel light is attached to the egg yolk, and one of them to that little embryo. It's kind of like a straw. So it's sitting there going, it's not using its mouth, but inside it's just going and taking all that good food in with all those vitamins and minerals and all the things that it needs to grow. It's eating really, really well in there, just like you need to. You eat good food, right, to grow big and strong? Well, that's what that embryo is doing. The third thing that you might see is something that looks like a shadow. That's about as big as the end of my finger. And it might move. And what do you suppose that would be? Ah, it's the embryo. Who said embryo? Yes! All right, it is an embryo. Remember, it's got to grow more before we can call it a chicken. Right now, it's a chicken embryo. It's a living thing, so we have to take care of it. But it can't live outside of the egg yet. All right, so those are the three things that we're going to look for. Now, the next rule. Well, the rules. First of all, we're going to put some eggs on top of here, one egg at a time, and put the light, will be shining on it. The first thing is, I don't want any of you to look into this box that has a hole until the egg is on top of it, because it's a really bright light, and we don't want your eyes to get hurt, all right? Remember that 1H, the health one? We're interested in your health, so don't look directly into that light, just like you wouldn't look directly at the sun, okay? All right. The next thing is that because that's on top of this box, we have to be very careful when you're over here. You're going to have about, I bet we can get 6 or 8 around the table at a time. And when you're around the table, you're going to be looking on top of this box. And you're going to have to be careful, because if you can't see, I don't want you pushing your neighbor, because your neighbor might go like this, and then the egg might fall off. And if the egg fell off, what would happen? It might crack, and then what happens to that embryo? It dies. We don't want that to happen. So we have to have respect for that egg and for your neighbor and not push anybody. If you can't see, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the egg on there, and I'm going to turn it around and let everybody see the different parts of it. But if after I've turned it a couple of times, you still can't see what I'm talking about because somebody's in your way, just say, Miss Mary, I can't see. I will move someone so that you can, all right? But don't push your neighbor, all right? Yeah. Okay. The last rule is nobody touches the egg but me. Because I'm careful, and I'm going to go wash my hands right now, so I won't have, if I'm the only one giving the egg germs and my hands are pretty clean, then it won't get too many germs. But if everybody's touching it, it could either fall off or it could get lots of germs, huh?
Or die.
Yeah. All right, so those are the 3 rules. Now, before we start, what are the 3 things that we're going to look for in the egg? What's one?
The shadow.
The shadow, that's the embryo. All right, what else?
You have to look for the air.
Yes, the air cell. Oh, if you can remember that, that would be awesome. What's another one? What's the last one? Do you know? No?
I do.
Do you know?
You have to look at the red lines.
The red lines. All right, I'm going to go wash my hands. So, if you look right here, what do you guys see? That's the air pocket or the air cell. All right.
He's taking his first breath.
Not yet.
No, not yet.
But it's ready for
And
him.
look at those. What are those? The red streaks. What do they do? Do you remember what they do?
Give him food.
They give him food from the egg yolk. They're hooked up to the little embryo. And if you watch right here, that little dot that's moving around, that's not very big, is what? The embryo. And what's he doing? Exercising, building muscles, just like you guys build muscles to grow strong. All right, so he's doing the same things that you do.